and welcome to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. We are now in 2025, and polls show that paying down debt is once again the number one financial priority for Canadians, including many here in Ontario. Many people make it a New Year's resolution, and BDO Debt Solutions recommends making it part of your 2025 financial plan to help you reach that goal. Joining me now with advice on creating your financial plan is BDO Senior Insolvency Advisor, Kirsten Bradley. Kirsten, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Before we get into it, can you share a little bit more about your role at BDO and what you do there?
Definitely. So my role at BDO is to meet with people to help them to take a look and really a deep dive into their financial situation, helping them to come up with a plan so that they can successfully move forward and really take some of that stress off their shoulders.
Well, we're a few weeks into the new year, and we know that we traditionally make resolutions at this time. And for more than a decade, surveys have shown that one of the top resolutions of Canadians is improving their financial health by paying down debt, which sounds great, but we know that resolutions are kind of hard to keep. So, Kirsten, why is it that BDO recommends, instead of making it a resolution, put it as part of your 2025 financial plan?
So, Shannon, you're so right. It's true. We all make those plans. And in fact, majority, over a quarter of us, sort of have lost that plan by the end of the first week of January. Most people quit before the end of January, and only 9% actually make it to the end of the year. So when you think of that recommendation as being something that we want to be striving for, it is a top resolution most people make, retirement, planning for vacations, getting their debt taken care of. So BDO definitely recommends that instead of a resolution, let's make it your 2025 financial plan. It gives us a little more of a chance to actually reach that end goal and make it through to the end of the year.
What are the benefits of having that financial plan in place?
Well, definitely the number one advantage is that it's going to lessen that stress. So we can take care of what life is going to throw at us. Life is always changing. There's always something. So being able to know that you can handle that and being able to know that your plan is going to be flexible to work with you, to get you through to that final goal at the end of the year. So the key is, of course, where do you start? So when you look at that, the biggest thing I want you to think about is be honest with yourself. So many times we look at a plan and we challenge ourselves, but are we being realistic with that? You want to challenge. You want to make sure you're looking, am I ready for that? Am I ready to succeed? Be honest to say, what am I owing? Am I keeping up with the current budget that I have? Have I even made a budget? A lot of people don't do that. So we don't know where we're supposed to cut back. We don't know how are we supposed to free up when we're not being honest with what is it that we're looking for? Are we striving towards a budget that's going to get us through to retirement? Are we looking at something that's going to get us through just to the end of the year? What is it that we're really striving for? And I think when we look at the budget, sometimes we sort of forget, you got to go back to the basics. Take a look at those needs versus wants. Are you really being honest with yourself? I mean, a need is that basic living needing, the housing, the groceries, utilities, or transportation, whatever that might be. And nowadays, of course, we know the cost of all of that is going up. We know that what's left in our budget 5 years ago is very different than what's left in our budget right now. So look at where can I cut back? What are my actual wants? And where maybe it's something like streaming. How many people have streaming and memberships that they're not able to utilize, or they're not actually, logging on to that membership, but they've forgotten to get rid of it. We get a lot of those free trials, and then all of a sudden we're realizing we're paying that amount every month for something that we haven't used again. Look at even something stopping for a coffee. Does it make sense to cut back a little bit? A small amount can add up over time. So from here, you have to start thinking, what are your goals? Because that's what you want to accomplish.
One of the things that I've personally started to do for this year is, yes, I have a budget in place, but I'm being much more deliberate about tracking my expenses. And sometimes people think you have to set your budget first, but I'm actually finding it helpful personally without even looking at the budget. If I'm tracking everything that I'm spending my money on, that leads you to creating your budget.
Mhm.
You'll be able to sort of, for the first month of the year, you'll be able to see, oh, okay, I spent X number of dollars on groceries. Unexpectedly, I had to buy socks for my daughter. So that's a clothing expense. So tracking those things can actually help you to build that initial budget. And I think, as we know, budgets kind of do this as we go. It's not necessarily, it is a plan, but it can be a flexible plan as you move through. And I like that you said too about not only focusing on your needs versus your wants, but also what are your goals, not only for perhaps this year, but years to come. I think you mentioned a lot of people are trying to save for retirement. We're planning vacations and maybe sort of those extra things. And in addition to that, we do want to pay off our debt. So, can you talk a little bit about how to set up those goals?
For sure. So, as I mentioned before, the most important thing is being honest. So being honest even with yourself as to what your goal is. We forget that those goals can be varied and change over time. So set something that we call a SMART goal. So a SMART goal means that you're truly looking into, one, is it specific? Know exactly what it is that you're planning for. If you set a goal for yourself and say, oh, my goal is I'm going to pay off $5,000 worth of credit card debt and I want to do it in 2 months, guess what? You've set yourself up for failure if you're living paycheck to paycheck. So being able to instead say, I'm going to set that goal instead, that I'm going to ensure that I pay, X number of dollars towards it over a period of this length of time. So when we look at a SMART goal, it obviously is an acronym for being specific. So make sure you know what your objective is. Make sure you know what is it that I'm setting this goal for, and write all of this out. Make sure you don't just, yes, our minds can hold things, but you want to really look at it. You want to kind of deep dive into it. Make sure it's measurable. So know exactly what amount. In this case, $5,000. I want to be able to pay that off in 1 year's time or 6 months' time, whatever the time frame, spell that out. Know how much it's going to cost you and do the work to break that down. Make sure it's action oriented. So put that plan into practice. Is it actually going to work for your budget? Is it actually something that's realizable? Again, if you're saying $500 a month is going to go to my debt, but at the end of the month, that means I'm not able to pay my rent or I'm not able to cover my grocery expenses, that's not a realistic amount. And that's what R represents, realistic. It has to be realistic. Don't set yourself up for failure. And so often I think we think that we're setting this great plan in motion, but at the end of the day, if we can't continue with it, we're going to end up stopping. We're not going to see it through to the end. So look at the timeliness of it. Make sure that you've set a time frame for yourself to be able to reach the goal in the time that you need to.
A lot of people think that setting a budget means that you are limiting yourself. You're having to say no to yourself all the time. And I like to try to change that mindset a little bit, because budgeting is actually giving you permission to allocate your money where you want it to be. And when you go back to talking about needs versus wants, and if you stop at Starbucks every day or whatever that looks like, it's not necessarily that you have to cut out that thing altogether. Maybe it's just cutting back a little bit, prioritizing, which one gives you the most pleasure or whatever that looks like for you. And setting these SMART goals as well. It's like you say, it gives you that that pinpoint target. And if you can be deliberate about how you set it up, I think it can be very advantageous. One of the other things I wanted to mention to you that I'm put into place for myself this year is a habit tracker. And so when it comes to our finances, could we put something together where if our goal is to pay down $5,000 in the next year, and that means I have to pay X number of dollars per month, we can track that for ourselves. We can say, yep, paid that on that date. Next month, yep, paid that on that date. Do you think that can sort of help be a motivator for people?
For sure. I think you have to make saving fun. Really, if
Yeah.
something's not fun, we're not going to continue to do it. So, using some of these sort of apps that are available or writing out, looking at what it is so you can see the success. That way, you're outlining what is it that I want to reach. On our bdodebt.ca website, we actually have a lot of great tools. There's budgeting tools and calculators and all sorts of things that can be utilized for free, of course, and that's always a good thing, especially when it comes to adding a little bit extra into our pocket. And there's also some great blogs. So, looking at things, finding those tools so that you can set yourself to say, I've reached that goal or I'm halfway there. How motivating is that? And I think you made a great point. It's like a diet. Don't eliminate everything that we love. If you are someone who loves chocolate and you say you're going to take that out of your diet completely, I guarantee you might be able to do it for a period of time, but depending on your willpower, eventually you'll give in and often will overindulge. So look at it that way. We have to set it up so that you are going to strive to that success, you're going to reach your goal, and you're going to have money in your pocket still.
I think we often try to take on too much all at the same time. And actually, some good advice that was given to me was set. You don't have to say to yourself, "I'm going to cut out all sugar. I'm going to pay X number of dollars on my debt. I'm going to save X number for a vacation." Having a lot of goals all at the same time can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like you say, it can set us up for failure. And so picking those priorities, and maybe it becomes you set a priority in January and you see your progress, which is great, highly motivating. And then as those become habits, maybe then in March, you add another goal to your financial plan. And again, you can see the progress as you go. So I think all of those things are really good things to put in place. And of course, creating that financial plan is just the first step. It's important to review the plan and so that you can watch and keep track of your goals, not only sort of at the beginning of the year, but of course throughout the year. And Kirsten's going to have some really good advice on how to track those things and when to review your plan when Money Matters returns after the break. Welcome back to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. My guest today is Kirsten Bradley, Senior Insolvency Advisor at BDO Debt Solutions here in Barrie and servicing all of Simcoe County. And as we enter into 2025, we're taking the opportunity to make a fresh financial start. That's why we're discussing putting in place a 2025 financial plan, a plan that will help you manage financially not only this year, but hopefully in years to come. And so, Kirsten, before the break, you offered some great tips about creating your financial plan. And we know that those who are watching are hopefully going to take it and run with it. Do you have any advice on how to stay on track and to keep motivated?
Definitely. It's one thing to make the plan. It is another to see it through till the end. And often we lose interest, or we make it too overwhelming. We make it too many steps. So keep it nice and simple, and make sure that you keep reviewing, because we know, and the last 4 years since the pandemic has really shown us a very different kind of financial situation. We've had high inflation, we've had high interest rates. So watching all of those things can impact the sort of plan that we make, and knowing what the future is going to happen to us, it's got to be flexible. It's got to be movable. Life steps in. and can be things that are wonderful, joyful marriages and babies and all sorts of things that can come into play that can really impact the plan that we've put in place for ourselves, along with things like that aren't so happy, things like job losses or relationship breakdowns, illnesses. All of those little things can come in and really take us by surprise. And if we don't have a plan in place, then unfortunately, when something like that happens, it can completely wipe out our any of our savings. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring. Keep a look at it. Ideally, if you could sit down every month and kind of rewrite or look at that plan. But if it comes down to it, maybe it's every couple months. You don't want to wait until the end, because if you wait till the end, you're going to just be looking at something and saying, oh, I wish I'd made those changes. So keep monitoring it, knowing that the flexibility has to be there. And as I said before, you want to make it fun. Even when it comes to something like savings, knowing that you're doing something like, for instance, the 52-week savings challenge. That's one that a lot of people, have taken a look at, but it's something that keeps you motivated because every week you are fully immersed in what's happening with your finances. So if you can make it fun, you're going to be more inclined to make sure. So the key, of course, is don't wait until the end of the year. That's really the most important part of it.
I agree with you, and I like the idea of making it visual. Doing that savings challenge, for example, you
Mhm.
have you have a physical tracker, whether that's a binder, whatever that looks like. You see the cash going into that envelope. It's tangible and can be motivating in that way. And I agree too about writing things down. The actual act of seeing it, um, writing it with a pen, whatever that looks like, I think is really it's so easy to do, but it's so critical, I think, in the success that we can have in our financial plans. And so you mentioned about looking at it, ideally on at least on a monthly basis, and I agree. It should be a monthly sort of time frame that you just review how things are going, because then you can make those adjustments. Because, like you said, life happens. And you mentioned a few of the examples of things that sort of come out of nowhere that hit us. You mentioned job loss. You mentioned the birth of a child and marriage and or divorce, illness. So many things can happen that are so unexpected that we end up having to dip into maybe our savings or unfortunately perhaps using credit to get by. So those regular updates I think are really, really important. So all of that's great advice and I really appreciate that. Now we know that when people make these resolutions, make these goals of changing something about themselves, for example, if we want to change our physical health, we tend to turn to some experts. We talk to maybe a personal trainer or a dietitian to help us with our diet. Should people be doing the same thing, turning to a professional when it comes to their financial health?
Definitely. Having just like in our physical, you would look to a trainer to kind of keep you on track, give you the tips. And that's what someone who actually is working as a financial planner can actually help you with as well. They can help you feel like you're reaching that goal. They can keep you on track with reaching that goal, especially if we have to be accountable for them. I mean, sometimes that can really kind of keep us in place when someone's given us a task and we know we have to get it done for them. Less likely you're going to put it in a drawer and forget about it. So setting a meeting with a financial planner, where they can look and say, what is realistic for you? Let's really deep dive into what that goal is. Being able to feel more confident about the challenge that you've put in front of yourself because you can actually see a timeline spelt out. They can really help you to kind of stay on track, be able to save more, and that can make all the difference. But it's also important to also think about the people who maybe they've met with a financial planner and are realizing maybe the debt's too much. And unfortunately, that really does happen. So if they're struggling with their debt or they need to just reduce the level of debt, then I would definitely recommend that they meet with a licensed insolvency trustee. That licensed insolvency trustee can make a really informed decision about where they can help and if they can actually help break things down for them.
Just going back to the financial planning part, a lot of people think that you have to be quote unquote rich to sort of go see a financial planner. Is that true?
No, that's not true at all. You just have to be motivated. You have to know that you're willing to make a change. You have to know that you've got something that you want to strive towards. Looking at the idea of putting a little bit aside and understanding that starting that earlier rather than later can carry an advantage as well. Investing into something when we look at compound interest can really start to watch our small little bundle grow into something that's going to help us in the future. So it doesn't matter how much, they can give you some direction that's going to make that amount grow.
And a lot of us have common goals. I mean, if you have kids, maybe you're planning on saving for their post-secondary education. We're all going to be retiring at some point. And so I think seeing a financial planner, no matter where you are on the sort of economic scale when it comes to your income or your assets, seeing a planner can help you to see or at least educate you where you can go, you can make those goals a success. So I think it's really important that that everyone goes to see a planner at some point in your lives. And then you mentioned as well that it could be that there's this unmanageable debt that we're having to deal with, and it is a heavy load and causing us a lot of stress. We're losing sleep, and talking to a licensed insolvency trustee may be something that can help you. Can you walk us through how do you contact someone like that? What are the steps that somebody can take in that direction?
For sure. It's important to remember that when you're speaking to a licensed insolvency trustee, it's something that initial meeting is completely free and confidential. And I think that means a lot to people when they realize that, you're just sitting down to take a snapshot of what's happening. Being able to kind of go through that information together, to be able to look at, is this something where maybe we're seeing something in the budget that you're not seeing? Maybe, being sort of a full breakdown of what can I pay off first, or what makes sense to be able to kind of make that goal more achievable. Even with a licensed insolvency trustee, I think there's a misconception that just if you go to see them, it means I'm declaring bankrupt. You're not. Licensed insolvency trustees are there to be able to help you really look at the picture, come up with a solution that's going to work for you. And yes, there are, bankruptcies or consumer proposals. And a consumer proposal would allow you to actually pay off your debt without that accruing interest continuing. And maybe it's a payment that's more manageable, and allowing you to rebuild and move forward. So, I think you can take a look, and a licensed insolvency trustee would allow you to look at all the options. Because maybe there are options that you weren't even aware of, that it doesn't necessarily mean an insolvency. It could mean just a restructuring of that budget as you move forward.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because sometimes it's not necessarily where a bankruptcy is going to be the one and only option. Maybe there could be an option where you can go and consolidate, with your local bank or the bank that you're banking with. Perhaps there's some equity in your home that can assist you to get through this temporary problem that you might have. So I like that you mentioned that it's not doom and gloom, I guess, is maybe the term when you go and see a licensed insolvency trustee, because all of the options I think will be explained, so that ultimately I think the decision is up to the individual. And like you say too, maybe it's just an adjustment in the budget, you know. And so I think it's important to tap into those people that have that knowledge and get the best advice for your particular family. Because I would you agree that sort of every person's situation is unique?
Every situation is unique for sure.
Yeah.
Everyone's their plan, their expenses, their family, their responsibility for maybe extended family. So there's all sorts of
Mm.
different things that can come into play that I think we often forget. Kind of the weight of the world could be sitting on your shoulders. And my favorite part of my job is when someone leaves my office and says, "Wow, I wish I had known this, and now I can actually sleep. I can answer my phone maybe because I'm getting those calls." There's a lot of different things that can happen that when suddenly you take that burden off, it opens up a whole different world related to your financial situation.
Well, you've given us a lot of great advice and it's very appreciated. Do you have any final advice for our viewers?
Well, I think, the biggest thing, as I said, is as you set that plan in place, make sure you're writing it down, you're looking and reviewing it, and most important, celebrate those small wins. Celebrate the things and remember that savings is not a marathon. It is a marathon. It's not just a sprint. So it's going to take the time. It's going to take some restructuring. You have to train yourself to get through to the end, and making sure that you're having fun and knowing when you reach that end, you're going to want to do it again.
Well, thank you again for being here. And for those who want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Well, they can reach out by contacting us either through our 1-800 number, which is, let me see if I can remember it. Sorry, 1-855 BDO Debt. They can also reach us through our website, which is bdodebt.ca, or take a look at our social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram at BDO Debt Solutions. And know, if we're there to help you, please take advantage of giving us a call so that we can help you through into financial freedom as we move through 2025.
Well, Kirsten, thanks so much again for being here. And I also want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. Until next time, I'm Shannon Jackson.